people, well, you've got Jamaican parents, if someone who has, say, an English parent and a Jamaican parent, it's really hard. I would think, just my own situation, my ex-wife was Mauritian, so children are sort of half and half. But when, I think, we've never actually discussed it, but I think they feel that they like going there and they feel something for the country. So I often think what the identity situation there is going to be.
Because it's even more fragmented.
So this identity question, I think it's, although we're talking all the time about how they are and the money and what Jamaican men are like and all the rest of it, it's almost as if that's on the surface. There's a far deeper question that you've got to get down and think about and inquire about and resolve.
About the identity?
Yeah. It's not all these, I went there and I had to wait for 5 minutes. That's irrelevant. That's all on the surface. I just feel that there's a far deeper question, far wider ranging, which affects everybody. Even me with a 1/8.
Yeah, are you sort of saying you're born with an identity? Or
that there is something. There's this almost
change.
Yeah, almost whatever unknown quantity that you're trying to fathom out. You're trying to search for something. Maybe it's not identity. Maybe it's something else, but something.
But it probably is identity in the sense that people are always kind of trying to get to know themselves. And it's the same. It's what some people call the soul. It's what some people call, the Buddhists call it something else. We are calling it identity. And if that is what the identity is, well, I don't think you can really say what it is then, because it's still going to be an accumulation of where you've grown up. Somebody said to me, "You were born in Jamaica." I was actually conceived in Jamaica, and I was actually born here. And somebody said to me that the fact that I was conceived in Jamaica, that would make a difference to my identity. Now, I don't know if that would, but I think that when you're thinking about your identity, it is your core self. It is who you are, isn't it? But then that means it hasn't got anything to do with your parents. It's got nothing to do with where you're from. It's got nothing to do with where you're born. It's who you've resolved who you are now. Because as Fiona said, you're growing up, you're changing from a child, you're changing as you're growing up. So therefore, at some point in time, you're going to resolve yourself and say, this is your identity and I'm happy with who I am.
But then that's supposing that you have an influence on your identity and it's not something fixed. I just see it as something that either you are or you're not. And if you've got a feeling of not belonging somewhere and searching for something that you call an identity, then it exists somewhere. It is something tangible. It's a question of looking for it and finding it and asking the questions rather than saying, well, it's not about where I was born or conceived or whatever.
But then if you're searching for something, you're not really searching for the identity, are you? You're searching for that missing piece in the puzzle.
Yeah.
And that missing piece in the puzzle is the part that makes you feel incomplete. And that part that makes you feel incomplete, that could be for a number of reasons, though. It might not even have anything to do with your identity, if that's the case.
Well, it may be. Maybe identity is a misnomer.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a combination of things. But it's still an issue, isn't it?
It is,
it's still an issue, whatever you call it.
Yeah,
When you've chosen, for convenience, you call it identity, which is fine. You've got to call it something. So it's searching for that like, missing link.
I know that every day I wake up I look for my identity and I'm not quite sure what it is.
Mm.
And I think, for me, my identity is when I look in the mirror and say, yeah, I'm happy with what I see and who I am. And that's not to say that I'm dissatisfied or, you know, I've got these hang-ups about, you know, I'm feeling unfulfilled. It's not like that. It's just that I just feel as though, I mean, I know what it is in my head, but I know that when I look in, it's not even when I look in the mirror, because I don't look in the mirror that often, but it is to do with feeling whole, and most times I don't feel whole, and I guess that's, you know, that's where you go searching all over the place, whatever it is. And I think when you're writing, well, I write a lot, and I think I ask myself questions, and maybe one day you'll tumble up on it, you know, you'll fall just by accident, you know. And even when I was thinking about the book, you know, it started off with me not having anything to say about it, and then I was thinking about some of the questions you raised, and then I came up with, I wish I worded it actually, but I came up with this sentence about, you know, was I Black British or Black Caribbean? And a bit from what Patricia said. But then, after that, I said that it did where is all that in the grand scheme of things? And how people, they, you know, when somebody asks you where do you belong, it's just a case of, you know, because you're of all these categorizations and labels, you just want to belong somewhere, but you're not sure where that place is. And I think, you know, that does apply to everyone. But I still didn't answer the question, but what happens is that it becomes clearer and clearer the more, you know, I analyse it. But it still doesn't answer the question.
The problem is the older you get, the more questions you have and the fewer answers you get.
I think because the older we get, we tend to be more precise, whereas before you could blow things over and you could gloss things over, but now it's hard to do. A bit more sensible these days.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, so.
Obviously this identity is important to you, but to me, I've never even bothered to think about it.
What is your identity?
I haven't a clue. I'm just not interested. You know, it doesn't worry me. I mean, I'm not conscious of...
Where were you born? Here?
Yes, I was born in England.
And your parents are?
The only time I would say I've adopted any other sort of anything else might have been when I went to live in Wales for a while. And I did feel very close to the people in Wales. I made a lot of friends there, and I sort of became involved in everything there. And I felt much more of a person while I was there. And now I'm back in this side of the country. I feel there is a lot missing, but other than that, you know, it's something I don't think about. So identity seems very low importance to me. I just want to get on with things, but to you, it seems to be more of an issue with you. It's more higher on your priorities of things in your life.
Yeah, I think it's become that way because when I wrote the book, I didn't really give it. When I wrote the book, I wasn't thinking about identity. I was just thinking about experiences, and I just wrote about those experiences, and it was just kind of getting it all out. But then what happens is that 10 years down the road, I'm looking at this book and I'm thinking to myself, Myrna, why did you react that way? Why was you so hostile? I started asking myself those questions. When I first did it, I just thought, you know, getting rid of all this junk that was inside and getting rid of all my frustrations and putting them behaviour. But then, I guess as you get older, you do wonder why you behave certain ways, or what influenced, well, I wondered what influenced me at the time, and how much was my mother's influence, and how much of it was me that I went to Jamaica with. And when the second time around, I still felt that, it's still the same thing. But, I don't know where I'm going with it. I got a bit lost there. But I don't know. I was talking about the identity and how I put it up on a priority, and I think it's just, it's kind of evolved that way, because I wrote it so innocently, without thinking about it, and it has forced me to address, why I felt as though I didn't belong, or why I wanted to belong, and that is the question of identity. And that's why that's raised. It's become a high priority. But when it was first written, all it was a series of frustrations. But all those frustrations did form part of my identity, because that is who I was, and that is who I am now. So
I think it's important to a lot of people, actually. Probably more so than people in your situation. But I think pretty much everybody, if they thought about it. I mean, I understand that I've not considered it exceptional on occasion, but it's that missing something.
I think it's important, because I don't think everybody wakes up feeling complete. It's not a perfect world, but I think I have to say to myself, Myrna, when are you going to like when I change all my images, and I say to myself, I don't know, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I don't know anybody who changed their images so much as I do. And I'm less frequent now than I used to be. But then I think to myself, what is it about changing your image all the time? Why aren't you satisfied with one type of image? Or what makes you want to keep changing? Why can't you be consistent? Why can't you be stable? And it bothers me. So I think, until I feel as though one day I wake up and say, yeah, I'm quite happy to be this particular person for an X number of years, then I'll say, well, that is my identity. Because that is consistent, that's solid, but at the moment, it's just going around, it's just changing. And even the other day, I said, oh my God, I'm getting through his hair, I've got to do something else with it.
Have there been times when it has been stable in your life, do you think? Like when you were at school, do you have a standard sort of image of yourself?
Well, that was my mum, wasn't it? That wasn't me.
Oh, right.
You have your two little plaits and you have your uniform, and that's about it. But I think ever since I've known myself, as a teenager, I've always changed. That painting upstairs, celebrating my identity, but I've actually called it the other side of tourism. It's just showing all the images.
Collage, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a collage of all the different faces I have. And, and I think to myself, there's not necessarily anything wrong with it, but at the same token, I think that there should be something set. Or maybe that's just conforming, I don't know. But to me, if I find something set, then I'll know that's my identity. If I wake up one day and say, okay, Myrna, your hair is going to stay blonde for the rest of your life, and you're going to dress a certain way. Even with clothes, I haven't found a wardrobe of clothes that I'm happy with. After a couple of weeks, I'm like, God, I can't wear that. And I see if I can fit into this I can't do it. So that is what my identity is. When I wake up one morning and say, yes, Myrna, this is your style, this is you, and then I'll say that's my identity.